I never thought the night I'd been counting down to for 4 years would end with me zipping up a suitcase and standing in the dark, listening to my own heartbeat. Graduation was supposed to be the moment everything felt worth it. The late nights, the pressure, the quiet sacrifices nobody noticed. I had imagined laughter in the living room, the smell of food drifting from the kitchen, my name written on a banner taped a little crooked on the wall. Instead, I was standing in the hallway, my cap still on the chair, while my dad's words echoed in my head like they didn't belong to him at all. It started earlier that day, when I woke up feeling lighter than I had in years. The sun came in through my window, and for once I didn't feel behind. I had graduated. I had made it. I texted my friends, answered messages from relatives, and even smiled at myself in the mirror. Downstairs, I could hear movement, dishes clinking, voices overlapping, and it felt real. My graduation party was actually happening. My dad had said it would be small but special, just family and a few close friends. I didn't need anything big. I just wanted to feel seen. My stepsister, Lily, had moved in 2 years earlier, right after Dad married her mom. She was younger, quieter, and always seemed to carry a storm inside her. I tried to be kind. I tried to make space. Sometimes it worked. Most of the time, it felt like we were sharing a house but living in different worlds. Still, I never imagined that her mood, whatever it was that day, would matter more than something I had worked my whole life for. Around noon, the energy in the house shifted. Lily stayed in her room, door shut, music low. Her mom moved around with a tight smile, whispering to Dad whenever they crossed paths. I asked if everything was okay, and Dad waved it off, telling me not to worry and to focus on getting ready. I believed him because I wanted to. I ironed my dress, set my cap and gown aside, and tried to hold on to the excitement. By late afternoon, guests were supposed to arrive. The food was already prepared, trays covered in foil, plates stacked neatly on the counter. I could see the banner rolled up near the couch. My phone buzzed with messages asking what time to come. That's when Dad called me into the kitchen. His face looked tired, like he'd already made a decision and didn't want to explain it. He said Lily was having a bad day. He said she was overwhelmed, upset, not in the right headspace for a party. He said it wouldn't be fair to force her to sit through it. I laughed at first because I thought he was joking. Then I saw his eyes. He wasn't joking at all. He told me we would have to call off the graduation party. Just like that. No discussion. No apology. Just a quiet statement, as if it were the most reasonable thing in the world. I asked him if he realized what he was saying. I reminded him this was my graduation, my party, planned weeks ago. I told him people were already on their way. He sighed and said we could do something later, maybe another weekend, maybe just dinner. He said family had to come first, and right now Lily needed peace. He didn't say my name when he said that. He didn't look at me either. Something inside me cracked, not loudly, but deep. I thought about all the times I had stepped back to keep the peace. All the times I had swallowed disappointment because someone else was having a hard time. I thought about how often my milestones were treated like inconveniences. I stood there, holding my phone, watching messages pop up asking if everything was okay, and I realized I didn't know how to answer them. I walked past the living room and saw the banner still rolled up. The house felt heavy, like it didn't belong to me anymore. Lily's door stayed closed. No one asked how I felt. No one said they were sorry. Dad just told me to text people and explain. To explain what? That my graduation mattered less than someone's bad mood? I went back to my room and sat on the bed. My cap and gown looked strange now, like props from a life that wasn't mine. I could hear my dad on the phone, canceling plans, his voice calm and steady. I waited for him to come upstairs, to knock, to change his mind. He didn't. Minutes passed, then more. The silence felt louder than any argument. That's when I started packing. At first, I told myself it was just to clear my head. I folded clothes slowly, carefully, like I was afraid of what would happen if I rushed. I put my graduation cap on top, then paused, and moved it to my backpack instead. My hands were shaking, but my mind felt strangely clear. I wasn't running away. I was choosing myself, maybe for the first time. As the sun went down, the house grew quiet. The food stayed untouched. The banner never made it to the wall. I zipped my suitcase and stood by the door, listening for footsteps. I wondered if Dad would notice. I wondered if he would stop me. Part of me hoped he would. Another part already knew how this would go. I reached for the handle, my heart pounding, not knowing what waited for me outside, or what would happen once I crossed that line. I didn't know if I was making the right choice. I only knew I couldn't stay. And just as I opened the door, I heard my dad's voice behind me, saying my name in a way I had never heard before, caught between surprise and something else I couldn't quite read. I froze with my hand still on the door, my suitcase tilted slightly behind me. When my dad said my name, it didn't sound angry, but it didn't sound loving either. It sounded unsure, like he wasn't prepared for what he was seeing. I turned around slowly. He stood at the end of the hallway, still holding his phone, his eyebrows pulled together in confusion. For a second, neither of us spoke. The silence stretched, heavy and uncomfortable, and all I could think was how strange it felt that this was happening on the night of my graduation. "Where are you going?" he finally asked. His voice was low, almost careful, like he was afraid the wrong tone might make things worse. "I'm leaving," I said. I was surprised by how steady my voice sounded. Inside, everything was shaking, but I didn't let it show. "I need some space." He looked at the suitcase, then at my backpack, and then back at my face. "Because of the party?" he asked, as if this were just a small misunderstanding. "We can talk about this. You don't need to go anywhere tonight." I wanted to laugh, but nothing about this felt funny. I told him it wasn't just about the graduation party. That was just the last thing in a long list. I reminded him of the times plans had changed without warning, of the quiet ways I'd been pushed aside to keep things calm in the house. He listened, but his eyes kept drifting past me, toward the stairs, toward Lily's room. "She's having a hard time," he said again, like that explained everything. "You know how sensitive she is." I nodded because I did know. I had known from the first week they moved in, when the house rules shifted and the air felt different. I knew from the way conversations stopped when Lily entered the room, from how her mood seemed to set the tone for everyone else. What I didn't know was when my feelings stopped mattering as much. "I'm not saying she doesn't," I replied. "I'm saying I do too." He didn't answer that. Instead, he asked where I planned to go, if I had thought this through, if I was being dramatic. That word stung more than I expected. Dramatic. Like years of effort, of hoping, of trying to belong could be reduced to that. I told him I'd stay with a friend for the night, that I just needed time to think. From upstairs, I heard a door creak. Lily's mom appeared at the top of the stairs, her face tight, her arms crossed. She asked what was going on, though it was clear she already knew. When Dad explained, she sighed and said this really wasn't the night for big emotions. She said Lily was already overwhelmed and that seeing me leave would only make things harder. That was the moment I realized no one was going to ask me to stay for my sake. They wanted me to stay so things wouldn't get more complicated. So everything could stay quiet. I felt invisible standing there, like I was the problem that needed to be removed or ignored. I picked up my suitcase again. Dad stepped forward, lowering his voice, asking me to wait. He said we could talk tomorrow, that canceling the graduation party didn't mean he wasn't proud of me. I wanted to believe that, but pride didn't feel like this. Pride didn't feel like being asked to shrink yourself because someone else was uncomfortable. As I stepped outside, the cool air hit my face, and I finally took a full breath. The house behind me looked the same as it always had, lights glowing softly through the windows, perfectly calm from the outside. My phone buzzed again, friends asking if they were still coming, relatives checking directions. I didn't answer yet. I couldn't. The drive to my friend's place felt longer than usual. My thoughts kept replaying the conversation, wondering if I had pushed too hard, if I should have stayed and talked more. At the same time, a quiet voice in my head asked why I was always the one expected to wait, to understand, to be patient. I pulled over once just to breathe, gripping the steering wheel until my hands stopped shaking. At my friend's house, her parents welcomed me in without questions, which I was grateful for. I set my suitcase down in the guest room and sat on the bed, staring at the wall. My graduation gown was wrinkled now, folded into a bag instead of worn proudly. I wondered what my dad was doing back home, if the food had been put away, if anyone mentioned my name once I was gone. That night, sleep didn't come easily. My phone stayed face down on the nightstand, lighting up every so often with messages I didn't have the energy to read. Somewhere between midnight and morning, a text finally came from Dad. It was short. He said we needed to talk. He said he didn't want things to end like this. He didn't say he was sorry. Lying there in the dark, I thought about my childhood, about how different things used to be before the remarriage. Back when Dad and I would celebrate small wins together, when my achievements felt like something we shared. I wasn't sure when that version of us had slipped away, but I knew it hadn't happened overnight. It had happened quietly, one compromise at a time. The next morning, I woke up with a heavy feeling in my chest. Graduation photos were already appearing online, friends smiling, families gathered around them. I should have been one of those pictures. Instead, I was here, trying to figure out what this moment meant for my future and my relationship with my family. I checked my phone again. More messages had come in, including one from Lily. It was brief and confusing, saying she hadn't meant for things to go this far, and that she hoped I wasn't mad at her. I stared at the screen, unsure how to respond. I didn't even know what this far meant to her, or if she understood what had been taken from me. As the day went on, the weight of unanswered questions grew heavier. Was this just about one canceled graduation party, or was it about something much bigger? Would my dad ever really hear me, or would I always come second to keeping the peace? Sitting there, watching the hours pass, I knew the conversation we were heading toward wouldn't be easy, and I wasn't sure if it would change anything at all. Even though I had spent the night away, I couldn't shake the feeling that the house was still following me. My dad's words, Lily's silent presence, and the quiet complicity of everyone else had carved a hollow space inside me that no distraction could fill. I tried texting a friend about what had happened, but every word felt inadequate. How could I explain that the night I'd dreamed about for years had been canceled not because of anything I'd done, but because someone else's feelings seemed more important than mine? I remembered my younger brother, Marcus, who had been at the house too. He had always been quiet, the kind of kid who slipped into the background and noticed everything but never said much. I wondered what he thought as Dad canceled the party, whether he felt conflicted too, or if he had already learned to stay silent to survive the tension. He hadn't called me that night, and I guessed he didn't know how to. Or maybe he didn't want to. While I sat there, trying to sort through my tangled emotions, I began thinking about the past few years. After Dad married Lily's mom, the household had shifted in subtle ways. Rules I didn't know existed were enforced suddenly. My ideas of fairness, respect, and attention didn't seem to apply anymore. Every time I tried to speak up, I felt like I was being measured against a standard I didn't understand. It was as if my own achievements were no longer entirely mine. They had to be weighed against the comfort of others. And tonight had made that painfully clear. Then there was Lily. Part of me wanted to confront her, to ask why she hadn't just come out and talked to me instead of letting everything collapse around me. Another part of me knew it wasn't entirely her fault. She was young, probably still adjusting to a blended family that already had its established routines. Maybe she didn't even realize the full impact of her moods or how Dad seemed to prioritize them over mine. But the fact remained, her feelings had stopped my night, and mine had been swept aside. I couldn't help thinking about the subtle ways our interactions had shifted over the years. I remembered a birthday party that had been postponed because Lily was sick, a school awards ceremony that Dad said he couldn't attend because he needed to help Lily with her science project, and countless other small moments where I had been asked to compromise. It had never been as extreme as tonight, but it had been a pattern. I realized that what I was feeling now wasn't just anger, it was a deep frustration with being invisible. Meanwhile, Dad's text that morning had only added more tension. He wanted to talk, but I had no idea if he understood why I felt betrayed, or if he even realized that canceling the graduation party wasn't just an inconvenience, it was a symbolic erasure of my hard work. I felt torn between wanting to leave, to create distance, and wanting him to acknowledge me fully, to show that he could be proud without letting someone else's mood override my happiness. As the hours passed, I noticed my phone lighting up with messages from people I hadn't expected to hear from. My cousin, a few friends from school, even an old teacher, all asking if I was okay. Each message reminded me that my life existed outside the walls of that house, outside the weight of Dad's choices and Lily's moods. But the question lingered. Did that even matter if the people who were supposed to matter most at home couldn't see me? By midday, I decided I couldn't just sit around. I needed clarity. I thought about calling Dad, but my stomach twisted at the idea. How could I explain everything without sounding accusatory? How could I tell him that it wasn't just about one party, that the repeated sidelining over the years had added up, that tonight had been the final straw? And if I did tell him, would he hear me, or would he dismiss it as just teenage drama or miscommunication? The conflict had begun to take on more layers as I sat there. I thought about my relationship with Lily. Was it possible to care about her while also setting boundaries for myself? Could I love her like a stepsister while refusing to let her moods dictate my milestones? I remembered moments when we had laughed together, brief glimpses of connection that suggested things could be different. But those moments were fleeting, and tonight had proven that even the strongest bond could be overshadowed by unspoken rules in the household. I also considered the family dynamics as a whole. Dad had remarried, and with that came a whole new hierarchy that seemed to favor Lily and her mom. Their voices carried more weight. Their feelings seemed to have priority. And while I understood the reasoning, it was a new marriage. They were adjusting too. The repeated message had been clear. My achievements, my milestones, my joy could be postponed or canceled to maintain peace. The question that burned inside me was whether I was willing to accept that as my reality. Even as I grappled with all of this, I started to notice the ripple effects. Marcus, my younger brother, had been quietly affected too. I imagined him watching from the sidelines, absorbing the tension, learning how to navigate this household without rocking the boat. What kind of lessons were we all learning from this? I wondered. Were we learning compromise, patience, and empathy, or were we learning to hide our own needs so someone else could have comfort? And yet, as much as I wanted to leave behind the pain and the resentment, I also couldn't ignore the need for some kind of resolution. I wanted Dad to understand. I wanted him to recognize that I deserved to celebrate, that my hard work mattered, that my feelings were valid. But I also feared that confronting him directly could ignite more conflict, push him further into defensiveness, and leave me feeling even more isolated. Then there was the social pressure. Graduation was not just a personal milestone, it was a public one. Friends and extended family were expecting celebrations, photos, stories, and memories. Canceling the party wasn't only emotional, it was public, a kind of invisible embarrassment that gnawed at me. Would people think my family didn't care? Would they understand that it wasn't a reflection of my worth, but a reflection of a household that had complicated priorities? As evening approached, I realized the tension wasn't just about one night. It was about years of compromises, small slights, and quiet sacrifices that had been expected of me. My graduation had become the tipping point, the night when the invisible scales of fairness finally tipped against me. I didn't know if Dad realized it, or if he ever would. And I didn't know if Lily understood the power her moods had over the household, or the pain that caused. By the time I finally put down my thoughts and looked out the window at the fading light, I knew one thing. The next conversation with Dad would determine the direction of our relationship and possibly the household as a whole. But I didn't know if it would bring understanding, conflict, or something in between. I wasn't ready to return home, but I also knew I couldn't stay away forever. There was no easy path forward. No simple solution to the tangled web of emotions, expectations, and family dynamics. Every choice seemed to come with consequences, every action with potential regret. And as the night settled in, I felt the suspense settle in with me. The uncertainty of what would happen when I finally faced the people I loved, or thought I did, and tried to make them understand why my night had meant so much. And somewhere in the back of my mind, the thought lingered. If I couldn't make them see me tonight, How long would it take before they ever truly did? The answer wasn't clear, and the tension was far from resolved. The next morning, I woke to sunlight spilling across the floor, but it felt colder than usual. I had barely slept, turning over every conversation in my mind, every expression, every word Dad had said, or hadn't said. I couldn't stop thinking about the party that never happened, the people who had shown up expecting to celebrate, and the moment I had been denied. My stomach churned at the thought of returning home, knowing that behind those walls, Dad was waiting, probably expecting me to apologize for leaving, for causing tension, for disrupting the fragile balance he had built with Lily and her mom. I paced around my friend's living room, my backpack heavy at my feet, my graduation cap sitting untouched on the couch. I kept going over what I would say, how I could make them understand, how I could finally make them see that my feelings mattered too. But every time I rehearsed the words, I imagined Dad shrugging them off, or worse, turning them around so that I felt guilty for even speaking up. My chest tightened at the thought. The more I thought, the heavier it became, as if the house itself had followed me here, pressing down with every memory and every unresolved argument. Then my phone buzzed. It was a message from Lily. Just one line. Can we talk? I stared at it for what felt like an eternity. Part of me wanted to reply, to demand answers, to ask why she let everything happen this way. Another part of me wanted to ignore it, to let her live in the house while I stayed away and protected my own feelings. But the curiosity, mixed with a strange sense of hope, pulled me in. I typed a quick, careful response. Where? And hit send. A few minutes later, Lily's answer came. I'm at the park down the street. Just come. I grabbed my jacket and stuffed my backpack over my shoulder, my heart thudding in my chest. Part of me wondered if this was a trap, or if she was even ready to face the consequences of what had happened last night. But I also knew I couldn't avoid it. I needed to see her perspective, even if it hurt. The walk to the park was quiet, the kind of silence that makes every sound feel amplified. I passed familiar streets, but everything seemed different, almost surreal. I imagined Dad pacing at home, probably wondering where I was, probably convinced that I would come back on my own. I imagined him rehearsing the words he would use, the way he would try to explain why my party didn't matter tonight, why Lily's feelings were more important. My fists clenched at the thought, and a wave of frustration and sadness hit me all at once. When I reached the park, I saw Lily sitting on a bench, her head down, hair falling over her face. She looked smaller than usual, vulnerable in a way that caught me off guard. Part of me softened, but I reminded myself that tonight wasn't about forgiving her, it was about understanding. I approached slowly, and she looked up, eyes red, but not fully crying. She didn't say anything at first, just motioned for me to sit beside her. I didn't mean for this to happen, she said finally, voice trembling. I didn't want your party to get canceled. I don't know how to deal with everything. Mom's been so stressed, and she trailed off, biting her lip. I could see the anxiety and guilt in her face, but I couldn't let it erase what had been done. I know you didn't plan it, I said carefully. But this isn't just about you or Mom. It's about Dad and me and how decisions are made in that house. It's about my life, my achievements, and the fact that sometimes I feel like I don't matter. My voice cracked slightly, and I hated that it did, but I couldn't stop now. I've been patient for years, stepping back for everyone else, and tonight felt like the last straw. She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she looked away, her hands fidgeting with the hem of her jacket. The air between us felt charged, thick with unsaid words and years of unbalanced family dynamics. I wanted to keep talking, to unpack every tiny moment that had led to this night, but I knew I needed to be careful. If I let my anger take over, the conversation would end before it even started. I took a deep breath and tried to imagine Dad's perspective too, even if it frustrated me. He loved me, I wasn't doubting that, but he had priorities that I didn't fully understand. He was trying to keep peace in a new family setup, trying to make everyone happy at once, even if it meant stepping over me sometimes. That didn't excuse what happened, but it gave me some context. And yet, knowing that didn't make the hurt go away. As we sat there, the tension between us began to shift, but it was fragile. Lily started talking more about her own struggles, pressure at school, her own insecurities, the way she felt overlooked despite being treated like a priority in some ways. I listened, partly out of empathy, partly because I wanted her to understand that I wasn't completely closed off. The truth was, this wasn't just my story. It was our story, tangled together in a messy, complicated family that had no easy solutions. The conversation was interrupted by the sound of my phone buzzing again. It was Dad. He had texted, "Call me. We need to fix this." My stomach sank. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to wait until I could gather my thoughts. Another part of me felt the pull of inevitability. I knew sooner or later I would have to face him, to confront the tension head-on, to demand recognition for the hurt I had felt. I glanced at Lily. She looked nervous, uncertain, like she knew something was coming too. We didn't speak. We just sat in silence, each lost in our own thoughts. The park felt quieter now, the late afternoon sun dipping lower, casting long shadows across the ground. The suspense in the air was almost tangible, like something big was about to happen, a moment that could change everything or make everything worse. I started to walk back toward my car, backpack over my shoulder, my phone in my hand. Lily followed, quietly, her presence a reminder that the night wasn't just about my anger or frustration. It was about the fragile threads connecting all of us. Every step toward home felt heavier, every block closer increasing the tension I felt in my chest. By the time I reached the driveway, my hands were sweaty, my heart pounding like it would burst. I looked at the house, familiar and yet somehow threatening. Lights were on, shadows moving behind the windows. I could hear voices, muffled but sharp enough to make me tense. Dad knew I was coming back. He was waiting. I didn't know if he was calm or angry, if he would try to lecture me or beg me to understand. Lily hesitated behind me. "Are you sure about this?" she asked softly. I nodded. There was no turning back now. The next conversation, the next few minutes inside that house, would decide everything. It could change the balance of power, the relationships, the unspoken rules that had ruled our lives for years. Or it could leave everything broken, unresolved, and even more painful than before. I gripped the door handle, took a deep breath, and stepped forward. Every nerve in my body was alert. Every heartbeat felt louder than the last. And somewhere deep down, I knew that tonight, nothing would be the same. The confrontation, the clash of feelings, and the tension we had all avoided for so long, it was coming. And I had no idea if we would survive it intact. The front door loomed in front of me, and as I reached for it, a sudden thought hit me. Maybe the hardest part wasn't just Dad or Lily. Maybe the hardest part was facing the truth about myself, about how long I had stayed quiet, how long I had let others' moods and priorities define my happiness. The door opened, the air inside thick and tense, and I stepped in, fully aware that this was the moment everything could explode. As soon as I stepped inside, the air felt different, heavier, charged with an energy I hadn't expected. Dad was standing in the living room, arms crossed, looking more rigid than usual. But it wasn't just him. Lily was there too, and behind her, standing silently by the doorway, was someone I hadn't seen before, a man I didn't recognize. He was tall, sharply dressed, with an unreadable expression that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. My first thought was confusion. Who was he? And why was he here on the night of my graduation that had just been canceled? Dad noticed me noticing him and cleared his throat. "I want you to meet someone," he said, his voice unusually formal. "This is Mr. Bennett. He's helping us with something important." I frowned, unsure what that meant. My mind was already racing. Important? What could possibly be more important than a graduation celebration I had waited for years to have? Lily shifted nervously beside him, biting her lip like she knew more than she was letting on. Dad gave me a small, almost apologetic nod, but his eyes held a seriousness I had never seen before. Mr. Bennett's gaze didn't shift. It was fixed on me, like he was measuring me, analyzing, and deciding something I didn't understand yet. My heart started to pound faster. Important for what? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. I don't understand. This isn't the time. Dad interrupted. It's time, actually. I think it's time you knew some things about our family, things you've never been told. My stomach dropped. I had already been on edge all night, and now I felt like I was being pulled into a secret I hadn't asked for. Secrets always made me uneasy, but this felt bigger than anything I could have imagined. Mr. Bennet finally spoke, his voice calm but commanding. I'm here because there are decisions that need to be made tonight. Decisions that affect not just this household, but your future as well. I froze. My mind raced. Decisions? My future? What could possibly involve him and my dad that was so urgent it had to happen on the same night my graduation was ruined? Lily stepped closer to me, whispering, I didn't want you to find out this way. My head spun. She looked guilty but frightened, like she was caught between me and something she couldn't control. Just listen, she said. Please. Dad gestured toward the kitchen table. Sit down. All of us. We need to talk. I did as I was told, my backpack still slung over my shoulder, my graduation cap forgotten on the floor. The three of them watched me like I was entering a game I didn't understand, and the tension in the room tightened around me. Then Dad dropped the bomb. The reason your graduation party was canceled, it's not just about Lily being in a bad mood. My heart lurched. I had thought it was unfair, that it was selfish, but I hadn't suspected this. There's something going on with the family finances, he said carefully. And tonight, we have to make decisions that could change everything. Mr. Bennet spoke up. We've been reviewing certain assets and responsibilities, and there are complications that require immediate attention. Decisions about property, inheritance, and legal responsibilities are on the table. And because of your age, your involvement is necessary. I felt like the floor dropped out from under me. Property? Legal responsibilities? My graduation was supposed to be about celebration, friends, and family. Not this. This was a whole new world I hadn't been prepared for. Wait, what does this have to do with me? I demanded, trying to steady my voice. Dad looked at me with a seriousness that hurt. It has everything to do with you. You're of age now, and there are things about the family you need to understand. Things that have been hidden from you for reasons we thought were protecting you. I shook my head, struggling to take it in. Hidden? Protecting me? You mean all this time I've been treated like my milestones didn't matter, like my feelings were secondary, and it was because of money or illegal stuff? Lily looked down, her hands twisting nervously. I didn't know, I swear. I didn't know Dad would cancel your party, not really. I didn't want to upset anything. I wanted to yell at her, but I also realized she might be telling the truth. She had been a pawn in all of this without even knowing it. Mr. Bennet pulled out a folder from his briefcase, setting it on the table. There are documents here that explain everything: ownership, responsibilities, and decisions that affect multiple family members. Your dad and I have been trying to figure out the best way to handle this, but it can't wait any longer. My pulse was racing. I leaned forward, my hands gripping the edge of the table. The folder looked official, thick, and intimidating, like it held secrets that could change my life. Dad's voice softened slightly. I should have told you sooner, but I was trying to protect you from stress. I didn't realize how much damage canceling your party would cause, how much it would hurt you. His eyes, usually calm and authoritative, looked almost apologetic. But the apology wasn't enough to erase the tension that had been building for years. I swallowed hard. So, my graduation, my party, none of that mattered because of money and legal stuff? I felt anger and confusion mix in my chest. You let that ruin one of the biggest nights of my life, and it wasn't even about me? Lily flinched, but Dad shook his head. It wasn't supposed to be about taking away your night. We thought we were protecting you. But I see now how it came across, and I failed. Mr. Bennet leaned in, his tone more urgent. We need to make a choice tonight. There are risks involved if decisions aren't made immediately. But there are also stakes you might not fully understand yet, decisions that could affect who stays in the house, who gets control of what, and even what your life looks like moving forward. I felt my head spinning. Everything I thought I understood about my family was being rewritten in real time. The injustice of my canceled graduation party suddenly seemed small compared to the layers of hidden conflict I had just discovered. My hands trembled, my heart pounding so hard it was almost unbearable. Dad looked at me, his face tight with worry. "I need you to listen, and I need you to think carefully before you respond. Tonight isn't just about a party. It's about family, responsibility, and the future." And just like that, the night I had expected to be a simple celebration had turned into a storm of secrets, legal complications, and hidden priorities. I realized that whatever choice I made next, it wasn't going to be easy. The tension in the room was electric, thick enough to almost choke me, and the air felt like it could explode at any second. Lily's quiet voice broke through my thoughts. "I'm scared too," she admitted. "I don't want anyone to get hurt, but I also don't know what to do." I stared at her, then at Dad, then at Mr. Bennet. The weight of what had been dropped on me was suffocating. My graduation party, my achievements, my family, everything was suddenly tangled in a conflict I wasn't ready to solve. The suspense was unbearable. Every heartbeat seemed louder than the last, every glance loaded with unspoken stakes. I knew the next moments would define everything: my relationship with Dad, my place in the house, and the secrets that had been hidden from me for years. And yet, I didn't know what choice to make, or if any choice could truly fix what was happening. The night had turned into a battle of wills, a test of family loyalty, and a collision of hidden truths, and I was right in the center of it, with my whole world on the line. I took a deep breath, staring at the folder on the table. The weight of the night pressed down on me, a mixture of anger, betrayal, and a strange determination I hadn't felt before. My graduation party had been ruined, my feelings sidelined for years, and now the secrets Dad had kept from me were staring me in the face. I realized this wasn't just about Lily's moods or a canceled party. It was about control, responsibility, and the future of our family. I couldn't let this moment pass without standing up. "I need to see everything," I said firmly, my voice shaking but steady. Dad hesitated, then nodded. Mr. Bennet slid the folder toward me, and I opened it carefully. Documents sprawled across the table: deeds, legal papers, financial statements, and agreements I had never been shown. My eyes scanned line after line. Dad had been managing more than I realized, but some decisions had been kept secret, not to protect me, as he had claimed, but because he didn't trust me to be part of the process. That realization hit harder than the canceled party ever had. "I see now," I said quietly, looking up at Dad. "This isn't just about protecting me. You've been making choices without me, and that includes Lily too. You've been deciding what's fair without actually including me in the family." My chest ached with the truth of it, but I felt a rush of clarity. This was my moment to be heard, to assert myself, and to reclaim what had been overlooked for so long. Dad's face softened, but his eyes were tired. "You're right," he admitted. "I didn't handle this the way I should have. I was trying to balance things, but I failed to see how it hurt you. I see that now." Lily, standing nearby, looked at me with wide eyes. "I didn't know it was this bad," she whispered. "I never wanted to take your moment away. I didn't know how to speak up." Her words were small, but sincere, and I realized that while she had caused the canceled party, she hadn't fully understood the impact of her moods on our household. I set the folder down and stood. "Then let's fix this," I said. "We can figure out the finances, the responsibilities, and the house. But we do it together, all of us. No more secrets, no more canceling things that matter to someone because of someone else's feelings. We have to be honest with each other from now on." Mr. Bennet nodded. "If everyone agrees, we can start tonight. You have the power to influence these decisions now. But it has to be collaborative." For the first time that night, there was a sense of unity in the room, fragile but real. Dad, Lily, and I huddled over the documents, discussing what could be done, what needed adjusting, and what responsibilities each of us could take. There was tension, yes, and frustration, but also a budding understanding. I realized that my voice mattered, not just in the family, but in shaping the household and our future. Hours passed as we worked through the papers, negotiating compromises and making decisions together. By the time we finished, the weight of the night had shifted. There was still tension, but it was different now, a tension born of honesty and realignment rather than secrecy and avoidance. I felt a mix of relief and exhaustion, knowing that tonight had changed everything and that I had finally stood up for myself. Just as I was about to relax, Dad pulled me aside. His expression was serious again, and my heart sank a little. "There's one more thing," he said, lowering his voice. "Something I haven't told you about the house, about Lily's family." My stomach dropped. I thought we were done, that we had resolved the biggest conflicts. But the shadow of another secret loomed. "There's more?" I asked, trying to keep calm. Dad nodded slowly. "Lily's mom, she's been struggling with debts we didn't know about. And some of the assets in this folder, they're not all ours. Part of what we were dealing with tonight affects people outside our family too. If we're not careful, decisions made here could have serious consequences we didn't anticipate." My mind raced. Just when I thought I had control, I realized the stakes were higher than I imagined. The graduation party, the canceled celebrations, the hidden decisions, they were all pieces of a bigger puzzle that wasn't just about me, my dad, or Lily. The choices we made tonight could ripple far beyond our household. Lily stepped forward, looking worried. "So, what does that mean for us?" she asked. Her voice was small, but there was fear in it. Dad sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It means we have to be careful, thoughtful. We fixed one layer of the problem tonight, but there's another we'll have to face. And I wanted you to be aware of it, so we can navigate it together." I felt a mix of exhaustion, relief, and an edge of fear. The climax of the night had passed, the confrontation, the standing up for myself, the negotiation of responsibilities, but the final twist had landed, heavier than I expected. Our family had survived the immediate storm, but the horizon was still uncertain. As I looked at Dad and Lily, I realized that life wouldn't be simple or perfect. There would be more challenges, more hidden truths, and more decisions to make. But tonight had proven something important. I had a voice, my achievements mattered, and I could face the unknown without being silenced. The folder remained open on the table, a reminder that the night's work was just the beginning. And as we stood together, an uneasy but determined family, I couldn't shake the feeling that the next chapter was going to test us even more, forcing us to confront the consequences of secrets we had barely begun to uncover. I had survived the night, but the story wasn't over. The real challenges were still ahead, and I realized that while I had reclaimed my voice, the family I loved, or thought I did, was still full of surprises, waiting for the next moment to turn everything upside down again. The next morning felt quieter, but not in a calm way. It was the kind of quiet that comes after storm, heavy with reflection and the weight of decisions made. I sat at the kitchen table, the folder from last night still open, though most of the papers had been reorganized and signed, decisions made collaboratively with Dad, Lily, and Mr. Bennett. The tension that had dominated the previous night had shifted into a careful, fragile peace. I could feel it in the way Dad moved around the kitchen, slower than usual, thoughtful, like he was rethinking everything he thought he knew about managing our household. Dad looked over at me, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "I'm proud of you," he said quietly. It wasn't loud or dramatic, but hearing it after everything that had happened felt like a balm. Years of feeling sidelined, of being overlooked, of watching my milestones get postponed, all of it seemed to settle into a single moment of recognition. It wasn't perfect. The house wasn't perfect. But for the first time in a long time, I felt truly seen. Lily shuffled closer, still looking nervous but more relaxed than the night before. I didn't mean to hurt you," she said, voice small but sincere. "I was scared, and I thought if I caused a problem, you'd be upset. I didn't realize how much I was taking from you." I nodded, understanding her more than I had before. She wasn't just a stepsister. She was a kid who had been thrown into a complicated household and hadn't known how to navigate it either. We spent the morning slowly unpacking what had been decided the night before. Responsibilities in the house were divided fairly, financial decisions were clarified, and we all agreed to communicate openly about future plans. The documents in the folder had turned from intimidating to manageable because they no longer carried the weight of secrecy. They were tools for fairness, not control. For the first time, I felt like a genuine part of the family, not just someone expected to endure silently. Later that afternoon, I went upstairs to pack away my graduation gown properly. I held it in my hands and thought about how much it had represented. Not just my academic achievement, but my patience, resilience, and quiet determination. The canceled party had been a wound, but it also became a turning point. I realized that milestones mattered, not just for recognition, but because they reminded us of what we were capable of. That realization made the gown feel heavier in a good way, like it carried all the lessons I had learned about standing up for myself. Dad came upstairs and leaned against the doorway, watching me fold the gown. "You know," he said, "we messed up last night. But I think this might be the start of something better. We've been keeping so much from each other, assuming we were protecting one another, but all we were really doing was creating distance." His voice was calm, reflective. "I want us to do better. All of us." I nodded. "Me too," I said. "And I don't want to feel invisible anymore. Not in this house, not in this family. I need to be part of decisions and celebrations, not just wait for them to happen or not happen around me." He smiled faintly. "Agreed. And I'll do better. I promise." That promise, simple as it was, felt weighty with sincerity. I realized that rebuilding trust wasn't about dramatic gestures. It was about consistency, honesty, and being willing to listen. Lily peeked around the corner, a tentative smile forming. "So, does this mean we can have something for your graduation? Even if it's small?" I hesitated, then smiled back. The party hadn't been about the size or the perfection. It had been about acknowledgement and celebration. "Yeah," I said. "We can do it. And this time, we all plan it together." As the afternoon light poured through the windows, I thought about Marcus too. He had stayed quiet during all of this, but I knew he had been watching, learning, understanding family dynamics in his own way. I went downstairs and found him sitting on the couch, scrolling on his phone. "Hey," I said gently. "Thanks for sticking it out last night. I know it wasn't easy." He looked up, a small smile on his face. "It's okay. I think things are better now." I ruffled his hair and felt a warmth in my chest. It wasn't just about me or Lily or even Dad. It was about all of us learning to navigate a family that was messy, complicated, and human. The rest of the week passed with a new rhythm. Conversations in the house were more open. Lily and I started to understand each other better, finding small ways to connect instead of competing for attention. Dad involved me in decisions, explaining why certain things mattered and asking for my input instead of making choices for me without my knowledge. Even small gestures, like preparing dinner together or sharing updates about bills and schedules, felt meaningful. By the time the weekend came, we were ready to finally celebrate my graduation. It wasn't the party I had imagined before, but it was better in a sense that mattered more. Friends came, laughter filled the living room, and for the first time in years, I felt like my place in the family was secure. Dad gave a toast, his eyes meeting mine as he spoke. "To achievements, honesty, and new beginnings," he said. Lily stood beside me, smiling genuinely, holding my hand for support. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. After the party, as the last guests left and the house quieted down, Dad pulled me aside again. "There's one more thing," he said, his voice hesitant but gentle. I braced myself, thinking maybe there was another secret or complication to unravel. "I called your mom's old lawyer," he continued, "about some of the assets and the debts we found. And it turns out there's a property she never mentioned that could actually help us cover some of the unexpected costs. It's a surprise, but it might give us more stability than we realized." I blinked. A twist even now after everything we had resolved. Life in this family, I realized, would never be predictable, but we had learned how to face it together. The unexpected challenges weren't going to disappear, but we had developed the tools, communication, honesty, and mutual respect to navigate them. That night, I lay in bed reflecting on the past few days. The canceled graduation party had felt like an ending, a betrayal, and a breaking point. But it turned out to be a beginning, a way to confront old patterns, understand hidden truths, and claim my voice in a family that had often overlooked it. The conflicts were resolved in the sense that we now had transparency, shared responsibility, and a renewed willingness to listen to each other. Yet the unexpected twist reminded me that life is always full of surprises, and part of growing up is learning how to handle them with resilience and grace. In the end, I realized that standing up for yourself doesn't have to mean conflict forever. It can mean creating the space for understanding, for collaboration, and for respect. I had reclaimed my milestone, my voice, and my place in the family, not by avoiding the conflict, but by confronting it head-on. And even with the twists and the hidden challenges that remained, I knew that I was stronger, more aware, and more capable than I had ever imagined. As the house settled into a calm evening, I walked past the living room where the banner for my postponed graduation hung finally, crooked but bright. I smiled, realizing it wasn't about perfection. It was about recognition, about being seen, and about moving forward. And even though life would continue to throw unexpected twists our way, for the first time, I felt ready to face them with my family, together as equals, and with our voices finally heard. The night ended with a quiet sense of victory and reflection. I had learned that family isn't just about blood or tradition. It's about honesty, respect, and the courage to claim your place, even when the odds feel stacked against you. And as I closed my eyes, I felt a profound sense of hope, knowing that this chapter, difficult as it had been, had prepared me for whatever came next.